How is it going, everyone? We've got some updates on Marvel's Wolverine as well as another Insomniac project. I think by the time this generation is all said and done, Insomniac is going to be the studio that's looked at to be the ones that hard carried PlayStation in an era of pretty much every other studio either putting out no games this generation, getting iced by live service games. Insomniac is the one that they did have a live service project in development, I believe, with the Spider-Man multiplayer project, but they had a lot of games come out this generation. It is very rare that you'll have a studio put out more than one game in a generation in the current climate of game development, but Insomniac is looking to do exactly that, and they look to be carrying 2026 as well, as far as having the major game release of 26, and then potentially something after that as well. Now, Marvel's Wolverine is a game that I think we are expecting now that it's going to come out in 2026. An MP First noted, someone familiar with the situation has confirmed to us that Wolverine will stick to the 2026 scheduled release seen in the leaks, and the Venom project remains in development. Additionally, they've also managed to gather some extra details about Venom based on information we've come across. As far as the Venom project goes, and I'll give you guys my thoughts on everything after it, the most important information we received from our main source is that Wolverine is still on track for a 2026 release, and Venom has been in active development. While we haven't been able to determine how advanced the Venom project is, if we assume Wolverine remains the priority, it's likely that the game is still in pre-production. There are also some details from the story that we got from a different source, but since we couldn't verify these, we recommend that you take these tidbits with a grain of salt. Okay, so moving on from here, I am going to talk about some story notes that MP First has also noted on their post. If you would prefer to skip that, we have the timestamp laid out. Just skip forward a couple of minutes, and I'll talk to you guys about my thoughts on everything going on as far as Wolverine and Venom coming out. But we'll go over some of these story notes. They're nothing too blow away, but I know some people just want to keep everything under wraps from a narrative standpoint and want the total surprise. So, you know, more on my thoughts at the end. We recommend that you take these tidbits with a grain of salt. One of these would be that Eddie Brock will take on the protagonist role. That might seem obvious to some what happened to the last user of the symbiote in Spider-Man 2. Still, it helps us rule out the possibility of other symbiote users taking the lead, such as Flash Thompson, who was Agent Venom in the comics, or even an original character. We also know that at least visually, this Eddie Brock will be closer to his comic book counterpart, more so than his live-action rendition played by Tom Hardy in the Venom films. On the topic of characters, the Venom game would also see the return of Cletus Cassidy as Carnage, and that was all set up in Spider-Man 2 as far as things going on with Carnage and things of that nature. Additional anti-Venom would be featured, but not the version controlled by Peter Parker. Instead, we would see the more monstrous-looking version from the comics that Eddie Brock eventually uses. As with Peter Parker and his struggle with Venom, Eddie can maintain total control over his persona with anti-Venom, so this could play a significant role in the story. As a final note, they've also come across some clues that suggest that Insomniac is currently working to include Miguel O'Hara, also known as Spider-Man 2099, in one of their projects. So take some of that information with a grain of salt as far as the narrative information. Alright, so now we're just gonna talk about my thoughts on all of this. Wolverine being a 2026 game is so important, and I think is such a big deal because it would really put PlayStation back on track into having like some quality lineups from their first party, because you've got Wolverine in 2026 and you've got Housemarque dropping Saros. That would be two quality first-party games in a calendar year, and on top of that, you know, if you have something like a remaster people get excited for, maybe, you know, we could look into the heavens and call for a PS3 remaster of games that we can play. I don't know. You could do something as far as a smaller scale game. There's the rumblings of the God of War Metroidvania game. Something smaller scale to go alongside those two games. Like, dude, my expectations out of PlayStation are so low these days that is a gigantic W. A gigantic W as far as first-party output. If we get Saros in the first half of the year, the second half of the year, you get Marvel's Wolverine, that's a total W, and at least it's better than 2025, you get one first-party game in Yote. 2024, you get one first-party game, and as good as Astrobot was, it's not the kind of game people usually associate with PlayStation, like that bigger budget single-player experience, but But, you know, Astrobot won Game of the Year, so, like, I can't really crap on that, and it was a phenomenal game. But, you know, one game a year in 24, one game a year in 25, and one game a year in 23 with Spider-Man 2 from first party. Again, that is Sony-owned studios, and I feel like the definition of first party has just gone all over the place. People are saying Ninja Gaiden 4 is a first party Xbox game. Like, bro, that's not what first party ever meant. As far as first party goes, a lot of that and the reasoning for the one game a year is because, you know, you would have had a Sony Bend studio put out a game if they didn't cancel their live service game. You would have had Naughty Dog put out a game if they didn't cancel their live service project. A lot of that is just the live service issue, and at least in 2026, we'll get 2 games, hopefully, at the very least 2 games. And, you know, ideally, would I want 3 games? Would I want maybe even a game a quarter? Yes, but nowadays, with the 5-year development cycle, that probably just isn't realistic to get 3 games a year or even 4 games a year, and you're gonna deal with the lackluster years just because there are so many live service games that have been canceled. If in 26 we get Soros and we get Marvel's Wolverine, that's a gigantic W. What's crazy to me is honestly thinking about the live service push that, you know, Housemarque isn't a studio that got pushed into doing something live service oriented, and they were the ones that were given the okay to do something akin to what Housemarque would typically do. At least that's what I expect Soros is. Could you imagine if they just say, oh yeah, Soros is a live service experience, you guys? At least that's what I assume Soros is. If they randomly hit me with Soros is some sort of live service nonsense, I would actually be so depressed, but I don't believe it is, but that would be absolutely insane. But nonetheless, Soros, Wolverine, and then Insomniac working on Venom, I think makes a lot of sense. Why would you just shelve Venom? That could be a huge game. I know some people are talking about that game being canceled, and the idea of it being in pre-production would mean it's quite a ways away, but if it is a smaller scale game, much like Miles Morales was, look, the PlayStation 6 isn't that far out. Having some sort of Marvel presence on a PlayStation launch, that is going to be incredibly effective, and that's going to get people excited. And Miles Morales was a cross-gen title. Venom could be a cross-gen game and people wouldn't care that much, but if it looks really good on the PS6, you know, that would be something that, at the very least, you putting Venom in the promotional videos of the PlayStation 6 is going to be so effective. People recognize Venom as a character, and just having Venom fighting Carnage in the sizzle reels, oh my god, that's a license to print money right there. It doesn't even matter that it's a cross-gen game. Just having it in the sizzle reels and having it in the trailers and whatnot to promote the PlayStation 6, that can be incredibly effective, and I think you would want some sort of Marvel presence for the PS6's launch or launch window whenever it would ultimately come out. I think Miles Morales was incredibly effective. They debuted Miles Morales with the PlayStation 5 when that was revealed in 2020. Doing that with Venom, I just think makes a ton of sense. Obviously, you wouldn't want to make Venom like the standout game, especially if it's a cross-gen game in the sense of it being the selling game for the PS6. Again, if it's a cross-gen game, but having it as a part of that catalog at launch, I think makes a lot of sense. But that'll do it for me. Again, exciting stuff ahead with Wolverine coming out still in 2026. Very happy about that, and Marvel's Venom looking to still be in development. I would imagine that could end up being a PlayStation 6 launch title or a launch window game set up for a cross-gen release as well. That's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.